Hi, Dr. Matthew Garcia here again. We're getting ready for our fifth installment of managing production risk through proper sire selection. Uh, Today, we're going to actually do the first part of two presentations. Uh, this part, we're going to talk a little bit about EPDs. It's going to be a little bit longer, but we're going to break it up into two presentations. Basically, we'll talk about them this time, and we'll talk about how to use them a little bit better next time, specifically for the Intermountain West. Now, what is an EPD? Basically, an EPD is a prediction of how a bull's offspring are perform for specific traits. Now, the real definition is how that bull's offspring are going to perform relative to that breed's average for those specific traits. So these are breed specific. So basically what this is a prediction of is how that bull's calf is going to perform relative to that specific breed's averages for those traits. Now, this is our most accurate method of selection today. This is generated on purebred animals. Our seed stock producers are the ones really generating these numbers for us in collaboration with the breed associations. EPDs come with accuracies. Now, older animals that have produced a lot of progeny will have higher accuracies associated with their EPDs. Younger animals, which we're typically buying and incorporating into our herds, have a lower level of accuracy because their EPD is based off of ancestral data as well as a limited amount of production data they individually have. But that number will go up as those individuals produce more progeny that are incorporated into the database. Now, one of the cool things we have right now is molecular enhanced EPDs. These molecular enhanced EPDs are actually decreasing the amount of time it takes us to get more accurate EPDs. So we can select these animals with a higher degree of confidence and we'll see less variability in those traits. Now, you've got to remember, EPDs are breed specific. Now, crossbreeding, we can still use EPDs as a tool, but you have to know the breed averages of the bull to really make an educated decision. That breed average, is it going to be something, once again, that's compatible with your cow herd? Remember, your genetic base is what you're really making a lot of these decisions on. So does that bull, his EPDs associated with his breed average, is that something that your cows and your resources can handle? Now, we do have crossbred EPDs. These are also something that we can use as a tool, but these are also highly inaccurate, and they tend to be based off specific herd breed averages for certain breeds that were used. So, still a great tool, but probably not something that you want to utilize to increase accuracy of selection. Now, the thing to remember about EPDs is they're expressed in units of the trait. So, if we're looking at birth weight, it's in pounds. That EPD is relative in pounds. So a +1 EPD for birth weight would mean that bull's offspring are expected to be 1 pound heavier than the breed average birth weight. Something like scroll circumference, which is measured in centimeters, a +1 EPD for scroll circumference, meaning that bull's scroll circumference, the offspring in that bull is expected to have 1 centimeter larger than the breed average. But remember, scroll circumference is an indicator trait. So the larger the scroll circumference, the earlier age of puberty that bull's daughters will have as well. Now, once again, all EPDs are reported with accuracies. The higher the accuracy, the more reliable that EPD is. The lower the accuracy, you're going to tend to see a little bit more variability. We tend to see that more in our young bulls. And EPDs are variable until a suitable number of offspring have been generated. Now, one thing I will caution you on is one calf crop does not indicate the true value of an EPD. A lot of people say, well, this bull produced 1 calf crop. He's good. We don't need to look at anything else. This is an indicator of his true breeding value. That's not necessarily true. Remember, you change that genetic base, you change that cow herd, you're going to see some variability as well. All right, so how do we use EPDs? Now, EPDs are a genetic tool that we've had for a long time, but they go right in line with a lot of the other things we've already talked about in some of the other previous modules. Now, one thing we want to do when we're utilizing EPDs, remember, these breed associations producing EPDs for a whole variety of traits, all the way from birth, all the way to carcass a lot of times. Multiple trait selection is essential again. Remember, we want to select all the EPDs at the levels of EPD, at certain levels that are compatible with our production goals, as well as our resources and genetic base in our cows. Look at all the EPDs that are important for your operation. This will help you avoid detrimental selection. What we mean by detrimental selection is you're improving some traits, but then you realize you have to go back and fix some other traits that you didn't improve or you might have damaged. Selecting that animal as a whole, identifying all the EPDs at the proper levels that are suitable for you and your operation are essential. Now, EPDs are great, but you got to remember too, this is paper. We breed live animals. So it's, if possible, look at the EPDs, but then also go look at the bull. He might have great numbers associated with him on paper, but phenotypically, visually, he might not be what you want to incorporate into your herd. Now, there are some factors that influence selection based on EPDs. Remember, multiple trait selection, but you want to prioritize the traits that are important to you. The traits you want to improve your herd for, really the traits that really help make those calves compatible with your research or with your resources. Identify bulls that are superior than what you already have. You want to try to be improving that genetic base every generation. Really look at the accuracies. Remember, low accuracy is a variable. EPD values will change over time as those animals produce more progeny. Now, one of the things we talk about, we're basically talking about live animals. Usually we're buying young bulls to incorporate in. If you're using an AI sire, those AI sires, their EPDs are going to be the same as the live bulls, but the accuracies associated with them are going to be much, much higher. So if you're using an AI sire, you can actually look at those EPDs and those accuracies, and you're not going to see as much variability because typically those AI sires produce a lot of progeny, so their EPDs are much more accurate, so you have a much better idea of what he's going to produce. Once again, multiple trait selection with EPDs. Don't improve one trait at a time and then trash all the other ones. You want to improve the animal as a whole so that you make sustainable improvements so that your animal is more adaptable to your system. Know how traits are correlated. Understanding that over-selecting for one trait might damage another trait. That's something we really need to be aware of so that we really look at that animal's whole. We can have calving-ease animals, select calving-ease bulls that do have heavy weaning weights. We don't need to have heavy birth weights to have high growth. Through multiple trait selection, we can identify animals that meet all the criteria for our operation. Now, there are some factors that will influence accuracy, like I've been saying. The amount of performance information available for an individual, its relatives, and its contemporaries, the more information, the better. The more information that individual has, the more accuracy we're gonna drive up. But the true indicator of how we improve accuracy is the number of progeny. The more progeny that are produced, the more accuracy, the higher the accuracy is going to be for that individual. And then heritability and genetic correlations among traits. Obviously, our growth traits, some of our carcass traits, like we talked about previously, being that they're more highly heritable, the accuracies on those EPDs are going to go up. We're looking at things like stayability, fertility, disease resistance, some of those things that some of the breed associations have for EPDs. Those EPDs are going to be very lowly accurate, not only because of the lack of information, but because of the low heritability. Now, this is just an example I like to put up here showing how EPDs will change over time. If you look at this EPD for this bull N-bar emulation in 1989, you can see, he was kind of a moderate bull, low birth weight, kind of moderate growth. But by 1997, you can see that, his birth weight average was a little bit variable, 2 pounds heavier. Winning weight average was double what they thought he was going to be. Yearling weight average, or a mature size correlation, was almost 3 times what he thought he was going to be. And then milk production doubled. So this was a much larger, growthier type sire that, was producing maybe some females that had a lot heavier nutrient demands because of that higher milk production than people originally thought. Now, why would we want to use low accuracy EPDs? We're buying younger bulls. There's a reason why we do that. Typically, we're buying those younger bulls, but we're kind of banking on some more highly or moderately heritable traits for our operations. Growth, carcass, things like that. But the real reason why we're doing this and we're using this is our seed stock producers make a concerted effort to really improve every generation. So our younger animals, if we're doing proper mating schemes, really looking at lines, really combining good animals back together, our younger animals should always be our best animals if we're making genetic progress. Now, once again, AI sires, like I talked about, they're typically going to have higher accuracy. So if you're looking for something very specific and you want to get away from that variability, AI is another practice that you could use. Young sire AI, a lot of young sires will go in there that have some of these extreme traits, and they'll build up accuracy. Sometimes I recommend that you let some of the other guys build up that accuracy for you before you utilize that AI sire. All right, so we're going to stop there, and next time we will talk about actually how to utilize all the tools that we've accumulated to this point, mainly focusing on EPDs in the Intermountain West and the levels and certain traits that we should be looking at going forward. So I will see you for the next module.